And the air, I feel the energy is flowing through me. I open my eyes and I take in all that I can see. Ooh, feels good. Ooh, just keep trying. Oh, it's fun. So you'll see like it should be.
Welcome everybody. 2017 ZDay here in San Diego. Sorry it's a little bit late. I just wanted to welcome everybody and say thank you to everyone that put this together. Don X, thank you so much. We got Matt, my buddy Matt right here, Matt Shabletsky, thank you for all you've helped. We got Jedediah McCollister, thank you. Mike Haynes, of course, who's going to be presenting after me, and Sean McCrea. Okay, thank you guys so much. This is it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun though too. We're really trying to make this thing real in San Diego. So, yeah, just wanted to start off with a show of hands. How many people heard about the Zeitgeist movement through the films? Can you raise your hands? All right, cool. So it was mostly through the films. How many heard about it without watching the films? Just heard about the Zeitgeist movement. All right, 1, 2, 3. All right, cool. So yeah, most people heard about it through the films. And yeah, there was 3 films. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but you know, the first one was just kind of a cathartic piece by Peter Joseph. A lot of people referenced that, the first Zeitgeist film. Just, you know, he was kind of expressing his own point of view, didn't really think about exactly which direction he wanted to go to with the movement or anything. Sorry, I don't have much speaking experience, so I've got to get used to this. But the second one was called Zeitgeist Addendum. It really kind of went into more of, you know, how the banking system works and kind of real solutions. That's what got me interested. When I saw Zeitgeist Addendum and a documentary that actually offered real solutions, I got really empowered through that. And the third one really was called Moving Forward, and that was more a movie about how the brain works and how people are shaped by their environment. So that's how most people kind of found out about the Zeitgeist movement. What does this word Zeitgeist mean, though? A lot of people ask us, like kind of a weird sounding word, Zeitgeist movement. What does Zeitgeist mean anyways, right? Well, if you go to Wikipedia, the Wikipedia definition is a dominant set of ideals and beliefs that motivate actions that members of society do in a period of time. So I was going to go through kind of some periods of time through, if you use like literature as an example, where you had different zeitgeists. So you guys can get an idea really of what this word zeitgeist means. Because people are going to ask you, they'll be like, zeitgeist mean, what does the word zeitgeist even mean? You know, so I thought I'd kind of illustrate this word in different ways. But before I go into that, I want to mention a little bit of what it's not. A lot of people say, oh, is it just another form of like communism? Or is it socialism? Or is it this? Or is it that? And really, you know, when you look throughout history, there's always these different isms, you know, that people kind of go through, right? You have people, you know, trying to make society better, but the fact of the matter is that no matter what organization you have, no matter how noble it is, it's going to kind of go through these different stages. And so, really, you know, when people ask us, is it this or is that? It's not necessarily this, but it can have little pieces of that. You know, you can have little pieces of socialism or of communism. But really, it's about adapting. It's about moving forward. That's why it's called the Zeitgeist movement. So I wanted to illustrate a little bit more about different zeitgeists we've had in history. If you look at literature, for example, You had the medieval period from 500 to 1500. After that, you had Renaissance from 1500 to 1670. These are all different zeitgeists. You had the Enlightenment period, the Romantic period, Transcendental period. These are all certain eras where people thought a certain way. People had an idea about government. They had an idea about a way of life. And they switch. Either a person or something, a war, something would happen. For instance, the thing that brought us out of medieval zeitgeist, the thing that brought us into the Renaissance was, for example, wealth from trade expanding into Asia and Europe. It was new enthusiasm into literature and learning and art. What brought us into Enlightenment was really, the American and French Revolution. So you have these different eras in time. And it goes all the way up until our time right now, which is postmodernism. That's what our time right now is called in terms of literature. Our time that we're living in from 1965 to now is called postmodernism. And so, or you could also say a monetary-based system, but these are zeitgeists. These are, like I said before, they are the Wikipedia definition, which is a dominant set of ideals or belief that motivate actions that members of a society take in a period of time. So these are just, so you have an idea, basically, of this word zeitgeist. I wanted to expand a little bit more. But moving to our times, the next great zeitgeist right now has to get out of the common belief that the problems that we have stem from poverty, war, pollution. We hear about these things, and people think right now that they're the sole result of corruption or actual scarcity or just plain old human nature. We need to be aware that this is an outdated system and that there's other ways we can fix these things. Right now we have symptoms. We have inaccurate causes and inaccurate ways to fix them. And what we propose is a more technical approach. That's what the Zeitgeist movement's about. Actually, a real, using technology, using all the different ways that we can fix things. There's a lot more options than our current system allows. And so we're trying to spread awareness about this. So yeah, actually, my good friend Mike Haynes, he's going to be going into this. I wanted to, before I bring him up, I just wanted to state, we've been working on a statement of purpose for the Zeitgeist movement. I just wanted to go through this real quick, and then I'll go ahead and invite Mike up on stage. So our statement of purpose for the Zeitgeist movement is: we acknowledge our role on earth as a collective human family. We do hereby affirm our great responsibility to serve the cause of world peace and sustainability by applying the concept of engaging social conflict peacefully, without violence, and to offer an alternative path to a peaceful future existence. To this goal, we'll work with others to increase public awareness of the structural violence within a scarcity-oriented and competitive monetary-based economic system. We're going to transition into an economy that can manage the capabilities of the technical age, an economy of abundance and cooperation based on natural law, which is termed a resource-based economy. You're going to hear this term a lot, resource-based economy. We're going to declare the Earth's resources as common heritage to all the world's people. We're going to utilize technology intelligently for the freeing of humanity. We're going to collectively understand that which influences human behavior and to address those influences such as culture, values, education, environmental influences, and language semantics. We're going to apply the principles of a scientific method for problem solving with human environmental concern. As members of the Zeitgeist movement, we pledge to use objectivity and encourage a positive shift in values to achieve these goals. Our members are entrusted to act in the best interest of the group for the larger purpose of world peace and global sustainability. So, buddy Mike, he's going to explain more about exactly what an RBE is and how it will operate.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you everybody for coming here tonight. We were trying to put on this event last month. That's usually when we do the ZDay, but fell through, didn't happen. But we got together and we made this thing happen. So thanks for coming out. There's a lot of things that we could discuss with the Zeitgeist movement, such as human behavior, values, And there's so many different paths we could take, but I think it was important to focus on what is a resource-based economy, give you guys a visual of what that looks like, and also how it works. And then after I talk, Sean's going to come up here and discuss the transition, how we can transition into that type of society. So what is a resource-based economy? A resource-based economy is the intelligent management of our Earth's resources for the creation of access abundance and to elevate the human condition. A resource-based economy is a society to where just by being born into the human family, you would have access to shelter, water, energy, food, healthy social interactions, education, all the things that you need to live a happy, prosperous life. So is there money involved in this? No, there's not. There's no need for that. There's no need for any medium of exchange because we've transcended it. A resource-based economy is an economic situation that has the capability of managing all this amazing technology we have today. So if you take the technological capabilities that we have and look at what we can really do on this planet, then there's no reason why any human being should be living in a situation of need. So every human being should have the capability of living in a world of abundance, cooperation, and an extremely high standard of living. And that's what RBE advocates. So it's directly opposite from, cooperation and abundance is directly opposite from a scarcity-oriented economic system, which that's what the monetary structure thrives on, based on our laws of supply and demand. If resources are scarce, you can make more profit, and there's more demand for it. So we have the capability of transcending that, and that's what we're advocating here today. So in order to really understand why we're at a crossroads right now and we need to transition to a resource-based economy, I just want to briefly discuss the history of economic changes. The computer's a little slow on me, but there we go. So looking back in time, for the majority of human history, we lived in hunter and gatherer societies. So we hunted for our food, we gathered things for a very, very long time, hundreds of thousands of years. We began to implement trade and barter, which allowed us to, take care of, small towns and communities. Around 10,000 years ago is when the agricultural age hit. So that's when we started that's when the monetary system was created. It worked for a purpose at the time. I mean, the monetary structure, it had, it represented smaller particles of exchange, which diminished the need of lugging around heavy objects for exchange. So the monetary system basically gave us the capability of providing for entire cities and towns and catapulted us all the way up into the industrial age. And the industrial age came about right around 1950. There was another huge shift that happened. 1950 was when cybernation made its big appearance. And cybernation is really just a combination of computer technology and machine automation. So all of a sudden, our capabilities drastically changed. So now, we find ourselves 2017, we're still in a monetary structure. And, you look at the youth of today, like the millennial generation, for example, one of the highest educated groups as far as, degrees are concerned, but they're also the biggest unemployed group as well. So there's a lot of problems that's coming about right now. And I foresee in the future that if we don't address this, if we don't really start to acknowledge our other capabilities like a universal basic income, then something called technological unemployment is going to be the biggest civil rights issue in the future. So along with the economy, the need to transition to a more humanistic approach, we also have major global threats that's kind of giving us more incentive to really make that shift, to make that change happen. And there's three major global threats out there right now. Everybody knows climate change is the most pressing right now. I mean, we're already slated to go well past, the scientists, they pretty much decided that the increase in 2 degrees Celsius globally is where the danger zone is. We're already slated to go well past that, past 3 degrees in the century. So if you're not sure what that looks like, I mean, 4 degrees is basically hell on Earth. That's right around 40% of all inhabitable land experiencing severe droughts, the extinction of half the species on this planet. So this is a major threat, a major issue, and in my opinion, this issue alone is why Donald Trump should not be president. So climate change is a very, very important issue that we all need to get together and really work on fixing that. There's also capabilities out there. You know, with climate change, there's a lag. You know, we're not going to experience the lag from the past 50 years until later on. But we do have technologies out there. We have massive structures that can suck CO2 in from the air and actually create materials out of it, like Kevlar, like carbon fibers, even precious minerals like diamonds. I mean, you can create diamonds out of this carbon. So we can turn it around pretty quick is what I'm saying, if we got our heads together on it. Another major global threat is poverty. Poverty is responsible for more deaths and human suffering than all of the wars in history combined. UNICEF and the UN estimates that between 18 and 22,000 children die every single day due to poverty and preventable diseases. But based on our capabilities, there's no reason why over half the world's population should be living in poverty right now. Global threat number 2. Here's number 3, warfare. And warfare has had a direct influence in my life. I was in the Iraq invasion, and that's what really pushed me to question all of these things, and which is why I'm actually up here today advocating this direction. So we could kill ourselves through warfare, poverty, global climate change. These are all 3 major reasons why we need to really address everything that's connected to this, our economy. With warfare in the monetary system, it's great for business. And if war is good for business, we really need to address that and ask ourselves, well, maybe there's something wrong with our current economy if that's a positive thing. So the great Jacques Fresco, who is the designer of a lot of these concepts that you're seeing in the video that I'm about to show you, he's 101 years old, just turned 101 last month. He's actually, Zeitgeist Day is dedicated in honor of his birthday. That's why we have it usually in March. And this city was designed off of his concepts. He has a couple amazing quotes, and I want to share this one with war. He said, "The armies are created to protect the system, not the people. In the future, an educated humanity will not stand for war." And I wholeheartedly agree with that. Here's another one that really got me to think about how we manage our land, how we keep, we're always fighting over land and resources. I was recently in a delegation to Palestine, and the common thing that I heard there was, hey, well, God promised us this land. And then this group was like, no, we had this land way back when. And it's the same story. You look at Texas, for example, all the different ownership that's went through, Spain, France, Mexico, the U.S. It's the same story all around the world. So we're always fighting over land and resources. But Jacques said that if we really wish to put an end to our ongoing international and social problems, we must eventually declare the earth and all of its resources as the common heritage of all the world's people. And that's a profound statement to think about, getting past this idea of ownership. If we can do that and just, kind of the same philosophy that the Native American Indians had, then maybe we can learn to live together. So I'm going to play this video to give you a visual representation of what a resource-based economy could look like. Okay, so you got a visual representation, and I'm going to describe how a resource-based economy would actually work from the big picture point of view, working on down. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to imagine for a second that we discovered a new planet, right? Like Kepler 186 up there, a recent discovery, by the way. How would we operate if we could actually get to this planet. Like if we could get to a planet that was just like Earth, where human evolution has not occurred yet, so all the rivers are clean, you could actually drink out of the water, pristine mountains, pristine wilderness, how would we operate? Would we conduct business as usual? Would we put a bunch of Democrats and Republicans down there, and kingships and dictatorships and all that stuff? I would hope that we've learned from our past from that and really analyze this question. What kind of systems? Hopefully we would entertain more of a systems approach. And so along with that, another question that comes to mind is what will be our goal? As a species, I would say that our goal is to survive. I hope everyone would agree with me on that one. Our goal is to survive, but not only to survive, but to prosper and flourish. So we want to transcend all of the inefficiencies that lead to warfare, to poverty, economic inequality, all of that stuff. We don't want any of that. So we want to prosper, we want to flourish. So we're going to need a methodology to do this. And it seems that there is something that has been tested throughout history, as long as we've applied it correctly, the scientific method, with building bridges, dams, solar installations, everything that we see, traffic lights, which is in charge of our lives every day. The scientific method is something that has been proven over and over again to work because it has to go through rigorous testing. That's why it's so awesome. And here's the methodology of the scientific method. So you have logic, reason, deduction. You have observation, a hypothesis. You make a hypothesis, and then you want to experiment and test that in a control group and an experimental group. And if the evidence supports a hypothesis, then you repeat that. So it's constantly being repeated and tested by not only the core group, but other people has to repeat that and test its efficiency as well. And if it doesn't work, then you just revise it and keep going until it does. And then you come out with a scientific theory. So what's great about the scientific method is there's no absolutes in science. It's a scientific theory. A scientific fact is really a misnomer because there's no ego. It's a scientific theory. It's always up to being proven wrong. And that's what's unique, what makes it different than politics or religion. Because politics and religion, right off the bat, it sets off to prove itself right. But the scientific method, no, it sets off to prove itself wrong. So there's a methodology that if we apply that methodology intelligently, then we could more than likely live in balance with this planet. So another question that comes to mind is, first, well, we got to ask ourselves, what do we have and what do we need to support? Right now, our population is right around 7.5 billion people and growing. So that tells me that we need to, whatever system that we create, education and awareness has to be a top priority so we can bring those numbers down so there's not such a massive growth anymore. And what we have a planet full of resources. So we would need to scan these resources, find out what we have where, and strategically orient ourselves to solar capabilities, wind power capabilities, wave power, different metals to be used. So we need to strategically orient our resource extraction facilities along with also the social unit of humanity, which is in fact the city system itself. And so this would be termed a global resource management network. So it's a systems approach. Everything's connected. We understand that. And we want to maintain a balanced load economy. So we want to track these resources constantly and make sure that the flow is balanced. Now, the social unit of humanity, the city system, why is that so important to focus on? Well, because there's a direct correlation with the amount of poverty in the world, too. Over half the world's population lives in a state of poverty. And if you travel the world like I have, you'd see that most of these cities out there are they're pretty inefficient. They're filthy. A lot of them, you can't even drink the water from the cities. So it's important to focus on the city system because that is the social unit of humanity. And with the city design, we would want to incorporate a lot of things in that design. We'd want to make sure that every aspect of human need is covered. shelter, water, energy, food. A carrying capacity. You want to make sure that you can support all the people that you have in that general area, which will also determine the design of the city. This particular model city system, and the one you see on the screen, is just one design. It's just one example. And you see it's circular shape. The city's circular. We kind of got the chairs a little bit circular. It's not because we like circles. It's because the circular shape is really the most efficient and overall efficiency for distributing resources, for travel. I mean, if you go anywhere in the city, you'll see there's circular lines and linear. That's monorail transportation. So say you have to go somewhere in one part of the city, drop your kids off to school or something. And then you don't have to backtrack to go shopping or go to wherever it is that you contribute your time for work. So in this city, you just constantly keep going and it'll take you back where you came from. It's important to localize. So these city systems, most of the production will be done in the city system. Localization is extremely important because we all know that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, right? So if the shorter that line is, the less energy that has to be put into the system for distribution of resources. So there's no need to ship blueberries from Chile anymore, for example. And then also it increases our position of survival too, because we're dependent on ourselves instead of an outside source. So I mentioned carrying capacity with the city. Carrying capacity is extremely important so that we can provide for the numbers. In this city, for example, it's designed to where each section would hold 12,500 people. Once you do the math on that, there's 8 sections total. That comes out to 100,000 people. The radius of this is 1.5 miles. So pi times the radius squared gives you the area of a circle, which tells you that we could build this in 7 area miles and sustain 100,000 people. And so if you have more than that, then you build another city. Or you would change the design, maybe in places like certain places in India where the population is a lot higher, a lot more dense, you would be building up a lot more. So it just depends on the location. The city system would operate similar to the human body. You don't have to have committee meetings to figure out, make decisions of what to do in a certain instance if, say, the water table goes down in the agricultural field, because there's probes out there that send that information back to the brain of the city, and it just reacts. So just like your body, if you get a cut on your toe, there's no committee meeting to figure out what to do about it. That'll take months. That's how politics operates. But your brain just responds and sends it everything that it needs. That's how we want to organize our way of being, just like the organism. So to give you a general idea of how the city system is broken up, each section, there's 8 sections, with this particular city system would focus on particular disciplines. You have agriculture and water, energy, waste and recycling, waste management and recycling. There's really no waste because everything right from the beginning, from the manufacturing phase, optimal use, optimal durability, recycling, it's all designed right from the very beginning. So it's essentially a zero waste economy. So you have technology, transportation, healthcare, education, which is really encompassing of the whole city. All these cities are university cities. So initially, like Roxanne was saying, the first city would be a research city, and putting out different materials that would enhance the other cities that they could use to operate and function efficiently. So as we get on, as we create more and more of these things, then cities will get more elaborate. Like a whole city would be created just for the study of the human eye. So these are the directions that we could possibly go in the future. And so the idea of this city concept is to make it to where it's extremely efficient to duplicate. So if you take one section out and copy it 7 times, you have the city system. So it's a very efficient use of resources. The idea is to produce as many of these as possible so that we can get people off the streets, get them where they have access to shelter, the highest education, and really elevate humanity. Then after that, we can get into more elaborate designs and different types of architecture. So not only with the sections, you have belts in the city system as well. So if you look on the outer edge of the city, you have a recreation belt, which that's a necessary human need. People need that to be able to go out in the woods and, dirt biking, hang out in the water. I do a lot of foraging and playing around in mission trails myself, and I know how important that is. So people need to be able to hang out in the outdoors. So you have a recreational area. There's a water belt, which also this little system, it's hard to see, but when you get up to look at the city, that system there, it's like an atmospheric water harvesting generator, which pulls water in out of the air for drinking purposes. Also, the agricultural belt that circles the whole city. You have vertical farms, which you see displayed in the back. So it's designed to grow all the food for all the inhabitants of the city. You have an energy belt, apartments, housing district, and then the industrial sector. So the industrial sector of the disciplines I was telling you about, maybe the section in agriculture, that's where the production of agriculture is going to take place. And there's fixed production, there's flexible production. You see it's broken up into two major areas there. And then you also have home production, because 3D printing is really revolutionizing the world today. There's 3D printing on steroids, which is called contour crafting, where we can actually 3D print houses now in a matter of a day. We can 3D print much of our own goods at home. 3D printing clothes, that's right around the corner. Tools as well. And then also 3D printing in the medical field. That's going to revolutionize the medical industry. So I'm just going to throw this out there to you, not to confuse you, because it does get a little confusing with the RB economic calculation. But I just wanted to show you that how through this method we can uphold certain standards of efficiency through every technical process that we're doing. And this particular economic calculation is for production functionality. So these algorithm equations will uphold the standards in everything. The city system, city design will have an algorithm. It'll probably be more like, okay, make sure it's got to have carrying capacity. You've got to have shelter, water, energy, food, transportation, recreation. All these things will be incorporated in the economic calculation. There's also economic calculations for production or designing materials as well. So the production functionality is encompassing all of this stuff. So you have to have design efficiency, production efficiency, distribution efficiency, and recycling efficiency equals the maximum production functionality. And then taking the design efficiency, you could take that one itself and break that down into a whole equation as well. For example, design efficiency, if you're designing, say, a computer or a cell phone or something like that, it would have to be durable for the first thing. I mean, this plastic here, our electronics are designed to break down in no time. So it would be designed to be durable with materials such as titanium. It would be designed as highly adaptable, so that if a part inside the computer goes bad, you don't have to throw away the whole thing. It can be easily replaced. It would be also with optimal recycling capabilities and also automation as well. So that's just an example of a standardization process that we can apply through all of our technical aspects here in a resource-based economy, ensuring not the minimum standards of health and decency, but the maximum standards of health and decency. That's where we want to go. And I'm going to address this one as we come to a close. Functions of government, because I get asked that a lot. Who makes the decisions is one of the first questions we hear. To answer that, you do. You make the decisions. You're free to live the life that you want, to explore the higher things in life instead of going out and slaving away to a 9-to-5 job every day just to make ends meet. So the functions of government, we've really transcended all of that because everything is a resource flow process. That's all we need is something to manage the flow of resources to make sure that we have optimal production, optimal distribution, and efficiency with recycling and all the aspects that connects this whole process. So with the education that's involved with it, because education is the prime directive, we want the highest informed human beings in the system, because then instead of having one Einstein, we could have hundreds of Einsteins. And then you could input back into the system, making my life better and making your kids' life better. So there's really no need for government. The functions of government is really within the management process itself, because we arrive at decisions. We don't make decisions anymore based on politics. Political opinions, which change every 4 to 8 years depending on who's in office. So also there would be interdisciplinary teams coupled with advanced computer database systems. And I wanted to mention that because these computer database systems would harness information in all technical fields, which no human brain can do that. So it can not only harness it, but cross-reference that information as well. So most of the information will be put out by these highly advanced computer database systems, and then you have the interdisciplinary teams that work together just to ensure the informational integrity. And that's it. So you have highly advanced teams in agriculture and energy production and city planning, and they all work together with these advanced computer database systems. So there's more of a flow of information. It's really the concept of, who do you trust more, the person who read one page of a book or a person who read the whole book to make that decision. So with our politics, these politicians, they are just not informed. There's no way they can get the information that we really need to create this type of society. So that's why we would use these advanced computer database systems with interdisciplinary teams. So welcome to the future of sustainability. And this is the legacy that we want to leave our children, something that's really worthy to pass on to the next generation. A future of peace, abundance, and cooperation, awareness, a highly educated population, no war, poverty, and politics, and to create a world where we're truly civilized beings. Because today, with armies, navies, perpetual warfare, economic inequality, climate change, poverty, we are not a civilized species. But with the future of sustainability, of advocating a different economic approach, then hopefully we can create this reality for the future of humanity. So thank you for your time, and we'll go ahead and ask John to come up here for the transition.
All right, evening, welcome. I'm glad to see everybody here. A little bit about myself. My name's Sean McCrea, and I'm a close friend of Michael Haynes here. And like him, I served in Iraq as well. In fact, it was 3 years ago that we met here in this room. So there's a little bit of interesting, sort of overlapping and, coincidental things. So, I'm not going to go into great detail about that experience. But, to say this, that was the transformational experience that brought me to, to seek out this information. And with that being said, what I saw and what I experienced while being over there, has changed my life in that I see, now that we move past the rhetoric and the empty platitudes, and we see things as they are. Operating within a monetary-based system, that promotes competition and violence, and we experience things that, change us. And so, I'm not going to go into, a great detail here, but I would like to just, kind of bring this forward as a kind of a guiding thought here. And this is our ethos. And this quote is very profound because what it says here, is that, we're not standing in opposition. We're creating a new paradigm. And that's the only way that we can effectively move forward. So I'm going to basically kind of this was based on some of the writings of Stan Azen, who is a member of the Venus Project International. And, it goes as such. I'm not going to go briefly discuss some of the transitionals into the resource-based economy. It's impossible to cover all the possibilities in a limited amount of time. Keep in mind that this is just an outline of many possible scenarios. We must emphasize that it is not possible to achieve social nucleation or end militarization or any other major social changes overnight. We are certain, however, our direction will demonstrate the feasibility of our proposals and that it is indeed possible to create a new society without forced redistribution of wealth and resources. It is vastly easier and more productive to maintain a civilization by providing access to the necessities of life than inventing new legislations and new ways to wage war to govern human behavior. We don't need a political system. We need a system of abundance with free access to all that people need to live prosperously and to be creative. Human and animal rights, environmental protection, safety, and security must be an essential part of the social design. The transition to a more sane society and to a global civilization can only be achieved through evolution and not by force. By producing solutions that will demonstrate greater personal and national security goals can be achieved without the use of military force. We will create enough pressure to initiate transition from fictitious economies of boom and bust to a sustainable and more flexible processes based on dynamic equilibrium. In other words, we must make the system subside under the weight of its own insufficiencies. At present, it seems that we are unable to achieve any real progress, no matter what aspirational or progressive ideas some individuals might have. Most people cling to a habitually comforting way of thinking that fail to produce long-term solutions required to evolve. What we need is an alternative vision, alternative goals, and an alternative environment to induce and solidify individual and social change. The Venus Project can produce all these alternatives and to lead civilization into a new era of human evolution. Our goal is to take every step possible to transition to a resource-based economy with minimal amount of social isolations and without deprivation, war, suspension of human rights, and continuing international conflicts. Right now, we are, at present, the Venus Project, we are presenting this information to the local community. We have other groups working together and around the world, and our message for the most part is well received across cultural lines. Many have signaled an interest to join once we begin implementation of the next phase of development. Our next step is to showcase our optimistic vision, allowing people to experience new concepts of future firsthand. This can be achieved by realization of the first city system, which in many varieties of design conceptualized in our presentation, the city can be built in any country with sufficient infrastructure and energy production, construction processes, and stable environment and political climate. The Venus Project will provide blueprints, designs, and guidance for specialists involved. Our innovative systematic approach to the construction processes will allow us to build the city relatively fast with little resource waste and at the same time achieving a high quality of the end result or end product. The city project is designed in a way that is its initial stage, it can be fully functional as a research and educational center, greatly improving the regions of its location by sharing technology and organizational processes with the local population. When fully developed, the city will demonstrate what the future can be when we implement a resource-based economy. It's going to be fully sustainable, practically pollution-free system with its own energy and food production, transportation, and other services available without the use of money within the city itself. New environmental, social organizations will induce change of the city and its inhabitants by providing behavioral modification needed to create a society of the future. The main goal of this stage of operation is the creation of the international network of educational and research centers without vested interest in a monetary system. Research processes are going to be focused on the development of a fully automated mining to product to recycling system and the creation of the advancement of human behavioral technologies, social and economical studies, social cybernization, and integrated renewable energy systems, along with other areas to create economies of abundance. Any country will greatly benefit from the investment of the city systems designed by the Venus Project. They will spur growth of new areas of social integrated industries, attracting a variety of specialists and sustainable technologies, social entrepreneurs, artists, and tourists from around the world. In the same time, increasing energy production, energy independence, and social stability, as well as lessen regional budget demands. Our approach can be easily scalable to include multiple regions and even whole countries in order to create large-scale sustainable systems. Specialists will work with local governments to advance and streamline processes initiated by the network of experimental cities, applying the best of our findings to improve the quality of life for every citizen of the host country without the involvement of local processes. It is very important that a major portion of the funding for the first experimental cities be provided by the general public and not by corporations or other profit-seeking entities. That way nobody could buy its way into the city system. And we will be able to keep it clean from self-centered ideations imposed by the monetary system. We are aiming to build experimental cities in every sufficiently developed country around the world in order to get them involved in the sustainable operations as soon as possible. This network of cities will serve as a scaffold of a new global society to come. In the next phase of our development, we could extend an invitation to other countries to participate in the Venus Project, a joint venture that will create a highly technological society on neutral territory. One of the major conditions will be the proportional investment of the resources and agreement between participants to make the Venus Project International immune from all political decisions of the current system. The new technological society will be comprised of multidisciplinarians and technicians working to research solutions to the common problems of humankind. The general policies of that society will be military and political neutrality, studies toward elimination of scarcity, improvement of the human condition, and ways to bridge the differences between nations. The Venus Project International will share research findings with participating countries and with any other regions that will agree to join us on the basis of mutual cooperation. At this stage of development, major indications toward our goal would be the implementation of the wide-scale automation by participating countries, allowing its citizens to shorten the work week or eliminate certain occupations altogether. The government will have to commit to policies that aim to full social and economic support of its population. A high level of production at marginal cost, along with personal values shift of the general public, will allow governments to build the first free access centers to provide people with high quality of goods and services without a price tag, greatly reducing crime levels and raise the standard of living of every individual. Incentives will be provided to induce investment into the advancement of and to increase the educational level and acquiring new specialization needed in this automated society. People who are going to enroll into the educational programs will be provided with the best available instructors, equipment, resources, as well as a highly automated, personalized research facilities. The first wave of new specialists will be science promoters and educators that will work to inspire more people to join the new educational programs. And my favorite part, the vast military-industrial complex will be converted into a special contingency force of first responders. The advisory board of the International Technological Society will survey the problematic areas of the globe to direct a special contingency force in order to deal with real problems, such as natural disasters, technological disasters, epidemics, and pollution cleanup operations, food and water shortages, relief, and other humanitarian activities of that sort. When international political relationships become stabilized on the values of peace and cooperation, we expect the initial merger of these closely developed countries to form a united continental systems. It will initiate the first truly global integrated resource management and distribution processes that will provide the needed to create large-scale integrated systems in transportation. The main focus of development will be channeled into the lagging regions in order to shorten their time to join UCS. The approach will allow us to break millennia-old relationships based on mutual distrust and competition. Unconditional help will be provided to undeveloped regions by the UCS under the guidance of the Venus Project International, and will allow us to arrive at an agreement to declare the Earth's resources as the common heritage of all the Earth's people. When benefits of freeing people from regimentation and subjugation will become evident, it will be possible to initiate a global survey of all available resources to determine further steps needed to take towards a truly planetary society. This will be a preliminary stage of implementation as the resource-based economy. At this stage, we anticipate suspension of trade and the use of money and a transition from human to cybernetic government, eradication of private property, labor, poverty, unemployment, and most crime, elimination of weaponry worldwide, and the end of separate nations. All goods and services will be provided and delivered by a fully automated system and will be available to all people, without restriction, making for a universal standard of living, higher than at any time during our history. People will pursue scientific knowledge in multiple areas as a lifelong learning experience. This society will initiate terraforming megaprojects, counteracting the effects of global warming, harnessing the power of the ocean currents and geothermal energy, making giant leaps with technology in inconceivable ways today. But this will be just the beginning, because we can exceed by far, even by our own wildest dreams, all these utopian ideas of the past by applying the best of our thinking for our technologies directly to our lives. The future is always changing, and there is no limitation to change. There are no final frontiers. This is we who shape the future. Thank you. I got a little tripped up there. So anyway, a lot of that's pretty abstract, and I was reading off script. So what I'd like to do is kind of like maybe bring some of that together. What does that look like? What are we currently, able to do? And so I'd like to go ahead and play this brief clip for you. All right, so anyway, I went ahead and thought I'd go ahead and add some links here if anybody's interested in following up on this, as some people might be. This is just a few thoughts moving forward, as we, in this new era, if you will, of, the alternative facts and alternative truth age. If you look at this through a historical context, most empires, going back, millennia, follow certain sequences. And based on the indications and things that we've come to understand to be true, we would be entering the final stage of empire here, known as the age of bread and circus. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, as this begins to devolve, what do we want to put in its place? And that's the final thought I'll leave you with here tonight. And we'll open it up to some questions. Right?
Yeah, we were both in the Marine Corps, and we were both in Iraq. And so I got into the Zeitgeist movement, and I gave a talk, and then Sean happened to show up that day. And then also later on, we got involved with Veterans for Peace, which is why I ended up going to Palestine a couple months ago. And I did a speaking tour in Japan, mainland Japan, about warfare, because they're having some changes in their Article 9 to their constitution that has kept them at peace for 71 years. So it's been a great thing to be involved with Veterans for Peace. That's been a very healing thing for myself, to be involved with turning things around and trying to make a real difference in a positive way.
Is it connected at all? Because I've seen these YouTube videos of the Iraq Veterans Next War. Is that connected?
Yeah, they're kind of connected to Veterans for Peace. Yeah. And so just the two of us being, supporting a more positive direction and, standing up for the oppressed, and also, being a part of this that advocates getting away from all that. It's very good for the both of us. Did you want to say anything on that?
Yep, sure. Hey, so yeah, as a matter of fact, I think, like I said earlier in the presentation, we met 3 years ago here, and there were certain experiences that we both had in common that kind of brought us together working. Because of those experiences, we were able to identify on a lot of points. We both came to the realization that in fact we are pawns on a geopolitical chessboard. There to maintain global a global hegemon, and to safeguard the status quo for the petrodollar. And although how we came into our service was a little bit different in the circumstances. He was more ideological, or more he was a young man at the time. I was a little bit older. Mine was out of economic desperation, to escape poverty.
Yeah, mine was patriotism, because I was brought up in Georgia, which is the Bible Belt, and I was drinking the Kool-Aid like you wouldn't believe over there.
What's the percentage-wise of people that are here for freedom and then or peace or patriotism versus economic reasons, school, things like that?
Do you know the answer to that?
Well, that's interesting. I don't think I could actually quote a specific statistic. However, I think that the two kind of overlap. So, for example, when you come from, lower working class, backgrounds, you sometimes become a little bit more susceptible to influences, because not having access to, higher education, people often find themselves compelled to, join such an organization, for reasons such as elevating your social status, or, being able to suddenly have a steady paycheck, or the opportunity to go to school later on, or because, there's a certain set of social expectations that go along with where you live. So he came from Georgia, I was from Texas, both relatively conservative, areas, and so,
Yeah, and just hitting on that point, that reminds me, Chris Smiley, who's the filmmaker here, he's standing up there with a camera, the white shirt, very talented individual who really knows his stuff with film work. We did a documentary together about the Miramar Air Show, just kind of touching on that, about the patriotism aspect. So the Miramar Air Show, if you go to the air show, you'll see they have all this stuff on display, like tanks, machine guns, and they get these kids. It's like Disneyland of war, and that's what we titled the documentary, because it's such a happy environment, family inviting, and you see these families everywhere and kids where they have face paint on, but it's not the cute little puppy dog or kitten face paint. This is war paint, camouflage design. And they're up there with the guns, and they're pointing at it. They're like, wow, this is so cool. Look at this vehicle over here. It's tank. I'm going to climb it. It's awesome. We went into a tent where they were simulating calling in airstrikes. And these kids were like, yeah, I got my target. And so I highly recommend you guys. It's a 19-minute documentary film. It's on YouTube. It's called Disneyland of War by Chris Smiley. And yes, check that out. It's a very good documentary.
Another question right here? Yeah, actually, for both you guys. Just because we all come from different places and different and backgrounds and everything. And I sort of grew up in kind of like an upper middle class environment where almost no one joined the military because it really was viewed as like, no, you go to college, right? You graduate high school, you go to college, you don't join the military. So, I guess one of my questions is, obviously you went to Iraq. Was there any one specific moment where it just sort of clicked like, oh, I am just a pawn on the global chessboard, and this is like, wow, this is awful? Or was it kind of more of a slow evolution? Because I'm wondering, obviously great this happened, that you guys kind of came to this realization, but I'm wondering, were there other guys that you served with that sort of came to the same conclusion when you kind of, or was it the sort of thing where once you say this to some of these other guys, they kind of look at you as like, oh, not traitors per se, but like, what happened? What happened to your patriotism? You used to be this cool guy, and now you're saying bad things about not the military per se, but just the system.
Right. Yeah. Well, to address the first thing that you brought up, the educational aspect of it, where I came from, that was a big recruiting tool to join the military so that you can have access to that education. When the recruiter talked to me, they have these cards, and they put these cards in front of you, and they ask you, okay, what's important to you? Excitement. All right, we'll put this card out there. Adventure. Education, travel. They put all these out there, and they're very good in getting you to think that, wow, this is for me, And later on down the road, while I was in the Marine Corps, I was very good at it. I was a very good Marine. And but when the Iraq War kicked off, all of a sudden a flood of reality hit me. And, I would estimate that anywhere from 50 to 60% of our intelligence was just flat out dead wrong. So we were going from, and I was a Force Recon Marine. So after going through, I had my different phases. I was a communicator, then I was like an Embassy Guard Marine. Then I got accepted for Spec Ops Force Recon. So I had to go through all the training, the NDOC, and all that stuff. Finally made it to a team, 2 years of workup. Very intense. It's the highest deployed unit in the entire Marine Corps. Very intense training. And so we did the same job that the SEALs did in the Navy, basically. And so we were going from door to door to door to door in Iraq, and all these doors were kicking in, and there would be a family in there, and you're throwing grandma against the wall, interrogating her. You're seeing little 4-year-old girls literally peeing themselves and soiling their pants because they were so scared. If you were a young man at military age, it would take you out of your home, take you to be interrogated. Just out of this association of possibly, being like a Saddam Hussein loyalist or something like that. So, and my mind is thinking, I had a daughter on the way, and I'm seeing these little girls screaming and peeing themselves and taking young kids out of their homes, and I'm wondering if they're ever going to make it back home alive. So for me, it was this constant process of going on. And then there was just a lot of events that, it was like foundations that one would fall, then another one would fall, then another one, then another one. And eventually I kind of got the bigger picture and started connecting the dots of warfare and profits and talking to people who work for Blackwater and, just learning about that, learning about Halliburton and Raytheon and Boeing and their involvement. With the bombs that were dropped, the 59 Tomahawk missiles that were shot not too long ago at Syria. Each one of those missiles cost $1 million. And guess who makes them? Raytheon. The Moab bomb, the mother of all bombs, the biggest non-nuclear weapon, that thing cost about $16 million, with $315 million going into the research to create it. So massive profits in war. Raytheon was making pretty good out of that deal. I kind of went long-winded on that one, but
So do you think there's an intention to create chaos so that then they can attack that chaos? So would you expound upon what you think about the whole cyclical system that feeds itself, essentially?
Well, yeah, they definitely chaos feeding on itself. Well, it's a whole system. It's a global system of structural violence, really. You know, I mean, it's designed within the system, and it's all connected to the economy as well. You know, war is big business. Lots of profits off of warfare, and you know, I look at that really as, you know, with Japan, everybody, our system really keeps us, it's all fear-based. It keeps us in a state of perpetual fear. You know, Iraq, it all happened out of just fear-based. There was no weapons of mass destruction. You know, there was no, I was sent over there, I was told to fight terrorism as well. I was the terrorist. I was the one kicking in the doors, terrorizing these people. So Iraq happened out of fear. We were scared, and so we attacked. So you hear from the predominant mentality of people, well, better we attack them over there than them attacking us here. And somehow they rationalize that as self-defense, you know?
Hey, Jed, what you described there, it sounds like I think there's a term for that, the Hegelian dialectic, where there's problem, reaction, solution. You know, and that's one of those self-reinforcing feedback loops that, you know, is very common in our society. You know, and that's expressed in many different ways, but, you know, particularly like, you know, is what Mike described with, you know, warfare. You know, we constantly have to find another. And in order to be able to, you know, safeguard or to, you know, execute that agenda, we have to, you know, create the problem, okay? So, for example, those terrorists, you know, and then, of course, you know, well, of course, you know, we you know, both sides, you know, like, for example, you know, ISIS and Syria and Iraq, you know, because now we create the need to go over there to fight that, okay? But really what's behind that is, you know, as usual, regime change in order to be able to, you know, create a pipeline that goes from Qatar through Saudi Arabia, through Syria, bypassing a plan, you know, by Iran to run a pipeline through, I believe it's through Iraq and Syria to the Mediterranean. So it's pipeline politics. Same thing with Afghanistan, except, you know, Afghanistan, it was later determined that they have significant mineral deposits, and also to be able to safeguard passage and to block competing interest with the Chinese and the Russians. So.
With more abundant energy, that could kind of break down that structure potentially. That was my comment. Anybody else got any questions and anything? No. Going once, twice.
I'm curious about I guess it's still the title of the movie, Moving Forward. What's the plan here? From the Zeitgeist, I'm talking.
Anybody want the plan moving forward, as far as like it's really I hate to kind of beat the same drum over and over again. That's what's been, you know, I've reiterated. I'm sure you've heard it before, Vince. I know you've been here. It's education. It's getting the discussion going, getting it, you know, moving forward, getting things rolling, and getting people to discuss these very items that we're discussing here. I think awareness is starting to reach peak levels, especially around this country, if not around the world, with these, you know, so-called strongmen that are coming into power. The election of Trump brought a lot of people, you know, woke a lot of people up, got them away from their TV sets and out in the streets. And really, I think what we need to do is get out there and start speaking to these people, going, hey, it doesn't need to be this way. You know, you're seeing the breakdown of the political system in front of your very eyes right now. There is a better way to do this, but it's going to require all our cooperation. And we can't build pretty cities until we get enough people that are aware that, you know, we have a new way to live, a new possible way to live on this planet, or more logical way, I should say. So getting out there and, you know, just speaking with those people, getting them in here. It would be nice to see, this place at maximum capacity. I don't even know what it holds in here. 9,500 people. Well, that's just a small percentage of who what we need to reach. Anyway, you miss.
I know you discussed like the ideas of government and how they wouldn't necessarily need to be one, and how like the whole society works as an organism. But has there been any discussion or opinions about like the criminal justice system and how that would work in a society like this? Like what sort of laws would be upheld if there are laws, and how would people be punished, and like certain things like that?
Yes, actually, there's been quite a lot of discussion about that. Of course, a resource-based economy is never touted as being any type of a utopia, even though a lot of people will refer to it as being a utopia in a very derogatory sense, like, utopias never work, and we've never espoused it to be any type of utopia, but it's more of an emergent society. What we advocate is that crime would be greatly reduced in a resource-based economy, simply because people don't have to fight to struggle, just to survive anymore. We'll still be dealing with, a lot of, issues with mental illness regarding that, but instead of treating these illnesses as crimes like we currently do, especially drug addiction is probably the number one thing that we mistakenly treat as a crime, especially in this country, we will recognize that they're health issues, that these people, they don't need to be locked up and have the key thrown away. They need to be helped. They need to be, counseled. Obviously, if they're violent individuals, we will have to remove them from society just so they don't cause any harm to others or themselves, for that matter. But, foremost, we believe that in a society where all people are provided for with, even not only the basics of life, the food, water, shelter, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs is, if you look that up, but a purpose in life, a way to forward their learning, their education, and actually get a feeling like they're included in society, that they can actually make a difference. We believe that just doing that would reduce crime greatly around the planet.
And I think a great example of that, I think, is Norway, country Norway, that their maximum sentence is 20 years, and they take some very serious offenders, murderers, and they put them in like a community to learn how to live with people again. So it's like a healing environment for them, rather than throwing them in a cage with all these thugs that really makes their environmental conditioning worse.
And I think we do have kind of a different society than Norway, so it's not exactly the same, but it's generally moving in that direction of treating people more like human beings than animals, or labeling them and throwing them in a cage, which then continues to perpetuate the problem. As we were discussing, poverty is one of the main drivers of crime. So you deal with a lot of the poverty, and that doesn't mean just giving people a bunch of money, just handing out money to people, but allowing them to have self-respect, have a place of their own, and not feel like because they're not integral in this system and devoted to it, giving their heart to this machine, that doesn't make them less of a person. It doesn't mean that they should be looked down upon, which is what we do now. And we all perpetuate that by the little things that we accept, saying, okay, yeah, that guy is, less than me, even though we don't necessarily treat them the same way we think it, So we have to change our thinking. We have to change how we see the future, for our society, and how we can make it better. Cool. Got a question right here.
How well are connected the Venus Project and the Zeitgeist movement? I've seen the movies, and they sort of mention a little bit about the Venus Project, in the Zeitgeist movie. And then the Venus Project, I don't see almost any mention of the Zeitgeist movement. And I was just wondering how well are they working together?
Well, it started out where the Venus Project started, and then the Zeitgeist movement was a activist arm of the Venus Project. So they were connected initially, but as time went on, they kind of realized that they had different techniques for reaching people. Venus Project is much more pure. You know, this is our idea, this is the way we see it, we want to present it the way that we want to present it. And the Zeitgeist movement was kind of breaking off to where it was becoming its own thing, you know, in the sense of presenting itself differently than the Venus Project maybe would want, you know. And but it's essentially the same core principle of getting to a sustainability type mentality in our society where that is the paramount. You know, where we realize that there is no success without sustainability. There's no future without sustainability. So how could we not see that as integral, you know, but then you see that sustainability isn't profitable, and that is the main impediment to moving in that direction. We have to realize that.
You know, right now with the corporatocracy or whatever you want to, plutocracy or whatever it is.
Oligarchy.
One of those ocracies.
We have the rat race, and the rat race is very competitive, and everyone's resume is like a sales pitch for, I'm a product. I'll work for you. I'll join your team. I'll make everything in your company work better because I'll be there. You know, in the Venus Project, I always wonder, like, how does one carry their weight? Like what if you have an inherently lazy person that just wants to eat bonbons and sip wine all day, and then over here you got an electrician that's climbing poles and wiring everybody's internet all day, like working his ass off, right? And then how does that work? Like, it's not a meritocracy, because then that's where, like, there's still going to be competition, and this guy's rich and this guy's still poor. So that's the part I always have trouble seeing in this, like, you know, beautiful circular cities with these gardens. And how is that still going to work?
So basically, this represents, you know, kind of like the symbol. Okay, this is, you know, the end product, and I think what you're trying to ask is, you know, how does that transition look, you know? But by that point in time, you know, once we've arrived at that conclusion, you know, it simply won't matter, you know, like whether somebody chooses to spend their time, you know, walking on the beach all day, or whether somebody chooses to, you know, admire fine art.
Yeah, it'll be a moot point in a lot of ways, you know,
because there will be a, you know, a process, a technical, you know, by that point in time, there's, you know, transcendence of government, and it becomes an automated process. And to get back to this gentleman's point, you know, between the Venus Project and the Zeitgeist movement, I think one of the key distinguishing features between the two is the Venus Project is more technical. You know, they address more of the technological aspects, although there are elements of social psychology and, you know, other such things. But I think with the Zeitgeist movement, he touches often, you know, like he addresses the human dynamic more, you know, such as, you know, the term you mentioned earlier, structural violence, meaning the conditions that are created by inequality within a society, conditions that, you know, have been proven to decrease somebody's life cycle, conditions that, you know, because you are deprived of, you know, basic essentials, you are often compelled to commit crime to supplement. We're talking about the mechanism of shame within our society that says we don't amount to because we've become debased in a way and humiliated to a point where and I could, you know, I'm kind of stuttering right there, but, you know, that's really how I make the distinction between the two, and as how they relate to each other now, and what the scope of that is, I'm not exactly sure. Although I do think that there was a little bit of a separation in terms of the way that they, you know, work and interact with one another. So, did that.
And also, I talked to a few people tonight about some other movements that use the word movement, and I was wondering, have any of you heard of the Thrive movement, which is also the free energy thing? And Using cybernetics and robotics, part of my idea of the person walking on the beach all day is that a robot is these houses can build themselves, basically, I've seen. And that all this technology already exists, literally. It's not science fiction.
No, it's not. It's a matter of scalability. Sean showed the video of the 3D printed house. I mean, imagine a whole city being built that way. But it's a matter of, moving to that next level of where we can scale this up to a global level. The technology it's not science. Yeah, it's exactly like you said. It's not science fiction. It exists, and it's a matter of just at this point optimizing it as well as making it as efficient as possible and obviously sustainable and environmentally responsible, which fortunately a lot of people that do work on these type of technologies are already, they're already keeping that in mind, which is a great thing to see. We are trending away from a lot of the dirtier processes of smelting steel and, burning fossil fuels to heat our homes and stuff. But there still is a long way to go. And what we want to do is, I think the harder battle right now is shifting the values system, getting it away from this me mentality, especially in this country, to an us. Like, hey, we are all in this together. We all live on this same rock that's just speeding through empty space, and it's the only rock that we know that can, support us. So let's, yeah. And what one person does on the other side of the planet is going to affect us on this side of the planet, and vice versa. And getting people to start to realize that, and shift their values to where, in order for you to succeed, we all need to. So,
What's the biggest gathering that is associated annually or whatever with the Zeitgeist movement? Like, is there like a national thing or anything like that?
There was a global ZDay event that was actually, in case some of you folks don't know, this is a global movement. There are chapters all around the planet now. The global ZDay event was held in March, in mid-March in Australia. I believe it was Perth. I don't know what city, but you can go catch it on YouTube. I mean, you can catch a lot of the chapters. Will go and they'll video the events like we're doing tonight, and they'll throw them up on YouTube or whatever, and you can just go search the Zeitgeist movement and see, different. It's pretty heartening too, because you can go online and see other people around the world thinking the same way you are, and and talking about the same things, and it kind of gives you a little bit of hope. I'm not saying I have a lot of hope right now, but there's a little bit when I watch those. Did you want to say something, Jed?
Oh, yeah. I was just you were mentioning the value system, and how we're going to reach a critical point with automation, because there's going to be a massive reduction in the needed workforce. So right now, it's more about what job can't be replaced by automation than what job can. So at some point, maybe when 20, 30, 40% of jobs are replaced, when people say, oh, well, my job, isn't going to be replaced. Well, even if it isn't one of the ones initially be replaced, people can understand pretty clearly the destabilization of our economy, which is based on constant consumption and growth. And if there isn't constant consumption and growth, then we collapse. It's like not getting enough air to breathe, Then what's going to happen when people start to see, well, wait a minute, this is continuing to happen. There's more and more jobs. People are just out in the streets. Like, this is crazy. So we really have to start looking at how that's actually going to be. What is that actually going to look like when people are starting? What point is it going to be? 10, 20, 30%? Because it's inevitable. Because these, basically every analyst can say that there's just not enough new jobs to replace these old jobs that are getting, made obsolete by automation. So that is the real critical point where is there going to be a movement to stand up and say, hold everything? These companies that are making billions of dollars with these all these robots now, and they have everything automated. How are we going to provide for ourselves? The robots are doing everything better than us now. And people are going to really at that moment have to be like, okay, well, we have to change our morality. We have to change how we see, like you're saying, lazy people. Like there's always going to be a certain small percentage of people that just don't want to do anything, but that's no matter what system you're in, there's probably going to be those people, but really it's people work to support their families and to support their, the whole thing that helps them. So if we have a system, move towards a system that's gonna support them, they're gonna want to be a part of keeping it going, so and you combine that with being able to apply the technology in the most efficient way, it's not going to take a lot of people that really, really want to work. And then what's going to happen is all the other people are going to be like, well, I can do what I want now. There's going to be a new renaissance of art and music and, people being able to study where they want and having access to resources to create these vision, Right, and because... it's going to be a new era for humanity one way or another. Either it's going to be, they're going to have to, the elites, this could happen where they're like, oh, we got to get rid of a bunch of these people now because we've got no use for them, And that's some people would say that's, a wild conspiracy, but that is definitely a possibility where they say, well, we're going to have to figure out something to do with these people. We don't need them anymore. We got these robots that are doing way better than them. So these are the things that I think we need to really start thinking about.